"It's your fault, don't provoke her." My son Thomas yelled at me through the door while I banged desperately trying to get out of my own room. I had just discovered that my apartment keys were missing, and it was no accident. My son had deliberately hidden them so I couldn't escape the constant abuse from my daughter-in-law Jessica. "I'm going to work, and you better not cause any problems," he continued shouting before I heard his footsteps fading down the hall. An hour later, he would return from work, and seeing the scene he would find in the living room, he would scream desperately, "What have you done?" and run for the phone. But that part of the story was still to come, and I had no idea what awaited me. I am Teresa. I am 66 years old, and I never imagined the day would come when my own son would make me a prisoner in my own home. The same house I bought with my savings from 40 years working as a nurse at the city hospital. The house where I raised Thomas with so much love after his father died when he was barely 12 years old. It all started 2 years ago when Jessica entered our lives like a destructive hurricane. At first, she seemed like the perfect daughter-in-law. Educated, elegant, always with a smile that I now know was completely fake. She married my son after only 6 months of dating, and when they lost their apartment due to financial problems, I welcomed them into my home without a second thought. "Teresa, you're an angel," Jessica used to tell me at first, hugging me with that performance she had perfected. "I don't know how to thank you for opening your home to us." How naive I was to believe every one of her sweet, manipulative words. The first few months were relatively calm, but gradually I began to notice little details that worried me. Jessica always found a way to criticize everything I did. If I made dinner, she would comment that the food was too salty or too bland. If I cleaned the house, she said I had left dust in places that, according to her, were obvious. If I bought something for the home, she would sigh dramatically and say I had no taste. "Oh, Teresa, I think that tablecloth looks so outdated," she would say with that fake smile pointing at the dining room table. "And those green curtains are out of style. You should change them for something more modern." Every comment was like a small stab that dug into my self-esteem. My son Thomas, who used to be my confidant and my best friend, began to change gradually under his wife's influence. Jessica had a diabolical ability to whisper things in his ear when she thought I wasn't listening. "Your mom is getting old, Thomas," she would tell him in a low voice while they washed dishes. "Maybe we should start making more decisions you know to protect her." That word "protect her" would become her favorite weapon to justify every intrusion into my life. Little by little, Jessica took control of different aspects of my home. First, it was reorganizing the kitchen to be more efficient. Then she started receiving my bills and helping me pay them. Then she began to suggest that maybe I shouldn't manage my own bank account anymore because, at your age, it's easy to make mistakes with numbers. "Mom, Jessica is right," Thomas would tell me when I protested. "She studied business. She knows about these things better than we do." My own son had started talking to me as if I were a child incapable of making my own decisions. The situation worsened when Jessica began to intercept my phone calls and control my visitors. When my sister Susan called to invite me to lunch, Jessica would take the phone and say, "Oh, Teresa isn't feeling well today, maybe another time." When my friends from the hospital came to visit, she would greet them with an annoyed look and tell them I was resting. "It's just that Teresa gets tired very easily lately," she would explain with that syrupy voice she used to deceive everyone. "The doctor says she needs a lot of rest." Of course, I had never been to any doctor who said such a thing, but my friends believed her because Jessica knew exactly how to manipulate every situation. Slowly, I realized I was being isolated from my entire outside world. My outings were limited to the supermarket and only accompanied by Jessica, who controlled every purchase I made. "You don't need that much detergent, Teresa," she would say, taking products out of my cart. "And this brand of coffee is too expensive. Let's get this other one." It was as if my own life was being slowly reduced to an existence controlled by someone who every day showed more of her true colors. But the worst was yet to come. And that morning, when I discovered my keys were missing, I realized Jessica's plan was far more sinister than I had ever imagined. The first time Jessica physically assaulted me was a Tuesday morning 3 weeks before my son decided to hide my apartment keys. I was making breakfast when she stormed into the kitchen like a wild animal, her eyes bloodshot with rage and her hair a mess. Without a word, she shoved me against the table so hard that I spilled hot coffee on my hand. "You stupid old woman," she yelled at me while I ran cold water over the burn. "You do everything wrong. This house is a disaster because of you." Her words were like knives, but the physical pain in my burned hand was nothing compared to the humiliation I felt in my heart. When Thomas came home from work that night, I ran to him to tell him what had happened. I thought my son would defend me, that he would take my side like he always had his entire life. How wrong I was. "Mom, it was probably an accident," he said, without even looking at the burn on my hand. "Jessica told me you provoked her first, that you said awful things to her." My eyes filled with tears when I realized my own son had chosen to believe her instead of me. "But Thomas, I never said anything bad to her." I tried to explain. She came in yelling and pushed me for no reason. My voice broke when I saw the look of distrust in his eyes, the same eyes that used to look at me with such love and respect. "Mom, you've been very confused lately," he replied with a coldness that shattered my soul. "Maybe you should rest more. Or maybe we should even take you to see a doctor." The way he said those words made me understand that Jessica had already been working on his mind long before that incident. From that day on, Jessica's abuse became more frequent and crueler. One day she knocked me to the floor while I was sweeping the living room, telling me I was kicking up too much dust and giving her allergies. Another day she pulled my arm so hard it left bruises because, according to her, I was taking too long in the bathroom and she needed to get in urgently. "If you tell Thomas anything, it will be worse for you," she would threaten me after each assault. "He already thinks you're losing your mind, so anything you tell him will just confirm you need medical help." Her malicious smile sent chills down my spine because I knew she was right. Jessica had successfully convinced my son that I was developing mental problems. Look at how she forgets things. She would tell him, pointing to objects that she herself had moved. Yesterday she put the apartment keys in the refrigerator, and when I asked her why, she said she didn't remember doing it. Of course, I had never put the keys in the refrigerator. Jessica had put them there only to discover them in front of Thomas and make him believe I was losing my memory. It was a strategy as cruel as it was effective. The humiliation extended beyond our home. When we went to the supermarket, Jessica made sure that employees and other customers witnessed my supposed episodes of confusion. "Teresa, don't you remember we already bought milk?" she would say loudly, feigning concern. "You're grabbing 2 cartons of milk, but we already have 3 at home." I knew perfectly well we had no milk at home, but when I tried to defend myself, Jessica would interrupt me with that sweet, condescending voice she used in public. "Oh, my dear mother-in-law, don't worry. We all have difficult days." People looked at us with pity, but their compassion was for her, not for me. The financial control came gradually, but relentlessly. First, Jessica convinced Thomas that she should manage the household expenses because she had more experience with numbers. Then she suggested it would be easier if she had access to my bank account to pay the bills directly. "It's for your own safety, Mom," Thomas explained to me while I signed the papers Jessica had prepared. "This way, you don't have to worry about due dates or calculating amounts. Jessica will take care of everything." What my son didn't know was that his wife had already started transferring small amounts of money to her personal account. Amounts so small that I didn't notice them at first. One day I discovered that $300 had disappeared from my savings account. When I confronted Jessica, she looked at me with that expression of feigned innocence I knew so well. "Teresa, you're imagining things," she said calmly. "Maybe you spent that money and don't remember. See why it's better that I handle the finances." I ran to Thomas to tell him about the missing money, but he had already been prepared by his wife for that conversation. "Mom, Jessica told me you've been very paranoid about money lately," he said without even checking the bank statements. "She explained to me that it's normal for people your age to have these kinds of unfounded worries." That night, crying in my room, I realized I was completely alone in my own house. My son had been completely manipulated by a woman who had a very clear plan to take over everything I had built during decades of honest work. Jessica started making comments about the value of my apartment in front of occasional visitors. "This area has gone up in value a lot," she would say, while serving the few friends who still dared to visit me. "Teresa is very lucky to have such a valuable property, although at her age she can't maintain it like she should." Her comments always had a double meaning. On one hand, she made it clear the house had considerable value, and on the other she planted the idea that I was no longer capable of taking care of it. It was a subtle way of preparing the ground for what was to come. The situation became unbearable when Jessica started inviting her friends over without consulting me. They would arrive in the afternoons and take over the living room as if it were their personal territory. They talked loudly, smoked cigarettes even though I asked them not to, and left the house a mess. "It's just that Teresa needs to socialize more," Jessica would explain to Thomas when he arrived and found the house full of strangers. "Isolation isn't good for someone her age." What she was really doing was showing her friends how easy it was to take control of my home, and probably also lining up future witnesses for my supposed mental incapacity. The day I found one of her friends, Carla, going through the drawers in my bedroom, I knew Jessica's plan had escalated to a completely different level. "Oh, sorry, Teresa," Carla said brazenly when I caught her. "Jessica told me to look for some headache pills on your nightstand." Of course, Jessica hadn't asked me for any pills, and when I confronted her, she looked at me with that icy smile that scared me so much. "Teresa, nobody was searching for anything," she told me firmly. "Carla was just looking for a tissue because she felt sick. See how your paranoia is getting worse." That night when I checked my belongings, I discovered that the copy of my apartment deed, which I always kept in my nightstand drawer, was missing. When I told Thomas, he looked at me as if I had completely lost my mind. "Mom, you're delusional," he said, with a mix of pity and frustration. "Why would Jessica want the house papers? She has her own job, her own life. I really think you need medical help." It was at that moment I realized my son was completely lost to me, and that Jessica had achieved exactly what she wanted: to make me look like a paranoid, incapable old woman while she took control of everything that belonged to me. The day I discovered Jessica's real plan was a Friday afternoon when she thought I was sleeping in my room. I had pretended to take a nap after lunch, but I was actually awake trying to process the nightmare my life had become. That's when I heard her voice talking on the phone in the living room, and what I heard chilled my blood. "Yes, Dr. Morris, I understand the procedure perfectly," she said with that calculating voice I knew so well. "My mother-in-law is showing clear signs of senile dementia. She forgets where she puts things. She has episodes of paranoia, and yesterday she even tried to physically assault me." Every word was a carefully constructed lie, but she sounded so convincing that even I would have doubted my own sanity if I didn't know the truth. "How long does the involuntary commitment process take?" she continued asking. "Because the situation at home is becoming very dangerous. My husband is very worried about everyone's safety." My heart started beating so hard I was afraid she could hear it from the living room. "Perfect, so we need you to evaluate her and issue the corresponding medical certificate," Jessica continued. "I'll make sure my husband is present during the evaluation so he can confirm all the episodes we've witnessed." After a pause, she added something that made me tremble with terror. "Once she's committed, we can proceed with selling the apartment to cover the medical expenses, right?" There it was, the naked, raw truth. Jessica not only wanted to get rid of me, but she also planned to sell my apartment, my home, the place where I had built my entire life with my late husband, the property that had cost so much work and so many years of sacrifice to buy. "Excellent, Dr. Morris," Jessica concluded. "We'll see you next Tuesday at 3 in the afternoon. And remember, it's very important that the medical certificate is convincing, because we might face resistance from some family members." When she hung up the phone, I lay paralyzed in my bed, feeling as if the world had collapsed around me. That night, when Thomas came home from work, Jessica told him her prepared version of the events. "Honey, your mom had another very strong episode today," she said while serving dinner. "She screamed horrible things at me, and when I tried to calm her down, she tried to hit me with your dad's cane." Of course, I had never touched my husband's cane, which rested peacefully in the closet as a sacred memory. "Are you okay, Jessica?" Thomas asked with genuine concern, taking his wife's hands as if she were the victim. Did she hurt you? Seeing my own son show more compassion for that manipulator than for his own mother broke my heart into 1,000 pieces. She didn't hurt me physically, Jessica replied, with that dramatic performance she had perfected. But Thomas, I'm very scared. Your mom isn't the same person we knew. I think she needs urgent professional help. Her eyes filled with fake tears as she spoke, and my son fell completely into her trap. You're right, Thomas said with determination. Tomorrow, I'm going to look for information on geriatric specialists. My mom needs medical attention, and if that means committing her for her own good, then that's what we'll do. Hearing my son talk about committing me as if I were a sick animal made me feel a desperation I had never experienced before. The next day, Saturday, Jessica intensified her strategy of isolation. When my sister Susan called to invite me to lunch at her house, Jessica picked up the phone before I could answer. Hi, Susan, this is Jessica, she said with that syrupy voice she used to deceive everyone. Teresa can't go today because she had a very difficult night. The doctor recommended she avoid outings until we stabilize her medication. What medication? I yelled from my room, but Jessica had already hung up the phone. When I tried to call Susan back to explain the truth, I discovered Jessica had disconnected the phone in my room during the night. It was like being in a prison where the bars closed in more and more every day. Jessica, why can't I talk to my sister? I asked her when I confronted her in the kitchen. She looked at me with that expression of false concern she had perfected over months of manipulation. Teresa, dear, it's just that when you talk to Susan, you get very agitated, she answered condescendingly. Yesterday, after her call, you were very restless all night. The doctor says you need absolute tranquility. Of course, there was no doctor, but Jessica knew exactly how to make her lies sound credible. Sunday morning, while Jessica was in the shower, I took the opportunity to check her purse, which she had left on the dining room table. My heart almost stopped when I found a folder full of documents with my name on them. There were commitment forms, fake medical evaluations dated for the future, and most terrifying of all, a power of attorney form that granted her total control over my assets and properties. I also found a copy of my apartment deed, the same one that had disappeared from my room weeks ago. In the margins, there were handwritten notes with different prices, as if she had been calculating the property's value for a quick sale. There were numbers ranging from $80,000 to $120,000 depending on market conditions. But what shocked me the most was finding a series of photographs of me taken without my knowledge. In the photos, I appeared in situations that looked compromising. Talking to myself while cooking, searching through drawers with a confused expression, and even one where I was crying in my room. Jessica had been documenting moments taken out of context to use as evidence of my supposed dementia. "What are you doing?" Jessica screamed at me when she came out of the bathroom and found me with her purse open, her face completely transformed, showing her true, unmasked self for the first time. "You nosy old woman, you have no right to go through my things." "These are documents with my name on them," I replied, trembling but firm. "You have commitment forms and papers for my apartment. What are you planning to do?" My voice broke as I said those words because I already knew the answer. "What I'm planning to do is save you from yourself," she said with a coldness that sent chills down my spine. "You're sick, Teresa. Your mind doesn't work correctly anymore, and someone has to make the difficult decisions that you no longer can." Her transformation from a sweet daughter-in-law to a calculating predator was so fast it left me speechless. "Thomas will never let you commit me," I said, trying to maintain my composure. "He knows I'm not crazy." But even as I said those words, I knew my son had already been completely poisoned against me. "Thomas!" Jessica laughed cruelly. "Thomas was the one who asked me to look into commitment options. He's convinced you're a danger to yourself and to us." Her words were like daggers straight to my heart because I knew she was probably telling the truth. "Besides," Jessica continued, moving closer to me with a malicious smile, "who is going to believe you? You're a paranoid old woman who says her daughter-in-law wants to commit her to steal her house. It sounds exactly like something someone with senile dementia would say. Don't you think—" In that moment, I realized how brilliantly diabolical her plan was. Jessica had built such a perfect narrative that any attempt I made to defend myself would only confirm her accusations of paranoia and dementia. It was a psychological trap that seemed impossible to escape. "Dr. Morris is coming to evaluate you on Tuesday," Jessica informed me as she gathered her documents and put them back in her purse. "And I assure you, after that evaluation, you'll be in a place where you'll finally get the attention you need." The way she said attention made me understand she meant sedatives and confinement, not real medical care. "And don't even think about trying to escape or call someone," Jessica added before leaving the kitchen, "because if you do, I'll tell Thomas you had another violent episode and tried to flee the house in a state of confusion." "Do you know what that would mean for your medical evaluation?" That afternoon, when Thomas returned from work, I tried one more time to make him understand the truth about his wife. "Son, please listen to me," I begged, taking his hands. "Jessica is not who you think she is. She's planning to commit me to get my apartment." Thomas looked at me with that expression of pity mixed with frustration that had become so familiar in recent weeks. "Mom, do you even hear yourself when you talk?" he replied tiredly. "You're accusing my wife of wanting to steal from you. Don't you realize how paranoid that sounds?" "But I saw the documents," I insisted desperately. "She has commitment forms and the house papers, even photographs of me that she took without me knowing." My voice got higher with every word because I could see he didn't believe a single one. "Mom, Jessica told me she found you going through her purse," Thomas said with feigned patience. "That's not right. People don't go through others' private belongings unless they have problems with boundaries and reality." Every one of his words confirmed that Jessica had gotten to him first to tell her version of events. That night, lying in my bed, I realized I was completely alone and that my time was running out. On Tuesday, Jessica would bring Dr. Morris, who had probably already been bribed or deceived, into issuing the commitment certificate. Once that paper was signed, my freedom would disappear forever, and Jessica would have free rein to sell my apartment and take everything I owned. On Monday morning, I woke up with a determination I hadn't felt in months. If Jessica thought I was going to give up without a fight, she was deeply mistaken. I had less than 24 hours before Dr. Morris arrived, and I needed to find some way to prove this whole situation was a carefully orchestrated farce. My first strategy was to try to recover some evidence of Jessica's schemes. While she was showering, I searched every corner of the house for the folder of documents I had seen the day before. I checked her room, her closet, even under the mattress, but it was as if it had vanished into thin air. "What are you looking for, Teresa?" Jessica asked when she found me in her room. She was wrapped in a towel and had that smile that now terrified me. "Did you lose something?" Her mocking tone confirmed she had moved the documents to a place I would never find them. "I'm looking for my blood pressure pills." I lied, trying to stay calm. "I thought maybe I left them in here when I cleaned your room last week." I knew it was a weak excuse, but I needed to buy time. "Your pills are on your nightstand, where they have always been," Jessica replied with false patience. "See, this is exactly what I'm going to explain to the doctor tomorrow. The confusion, the disorientation, the erratic behavior." Every one of her words was like a death sentence for my freedom. I decided to change strategies and tried to contact my sister Susan from the kitchen phone. But when I dialed her number, I discovered the line had been disconnected. Jessica had cut off the phone service for the entire house except for her cell phone, which she kept with her at all times. "Jessica, why isn't the phone working?" I asked her when I found her eating breakfast peacefully at the dining room table. She looked up from her coffee with that perfected look of feigned innocence. "Oh, I forgot to tell you," she replied, as if it were the most insignificant detail. "I canceled the landline service because nobody uses house phones anymore. It's cheaper to just use cell phones." Of course I didn't have a cell phone because Jessica had convinced Thomas it was too complicated for someone my age. My desperation grew as I realized I was completely isolated from the outside world. I had no phone, no keys to leave the apartment, and no way to communicate with anyone who could help me. Jessica had built a perfect prison around me. You know what Teresa, Jessica said to me while spreading jam on her toast? I think we should get you ready for the doctor's visit tomorrow. Maybe you should take a bath and put on that pink dress you like so much. We want you to look your best. Her request sounded innocent, but I knew she wanted me to look presentable for the evaluation that would determine my fate. For the rest of the morning, Jessica behaved strangely kind to me. She made me breakfast, offered me tea, and even put soft music on the radio. It was as if she was celebrating her victory early, savoring the last moments before getting rid of me forever. "Teresa, do you remember when I first came to this house?" she asked while pretending to clean the living room. "You were so sweet to me, so welcoming. You told me you considered me the daughter you never had." Her words were full of cruel irony, reminding me of my own naivety. "Too bad things have changed so much," she continued with false sadness. "But I guess that's life. People get old, their minds deteriorate, and someone else has to take control." The casual way she spoke about destroying my life made me feel sick. Around noon, I heard the sound of keys in the door. My heart raced, thinking maybe Thomas was home early from work, but when the door opened, a woman I had never seen before walked in. She was young blonde, dressed in elegant, expensive clothes, and had the same calculating smile as Jessica. "Mary!" Jessica exclaimed, hugging the stranger. "I'm so glad you could come." They acted like old friends, but there was something about their interaction that immediately put me on alert. "Jessica, dear, everything is ready for tomorrow," Mary said in a low voice, but loud enough for me to hear from the kitchen where I was pretending to wash dishes. "Dr. Morris already has all the forms prepared, and the nursing home has a room available starting Wednesday." "Perfect," Jessica replied with satisfaction. "And what about the apartment? Did you contact the real estate agent?" Her words confirmed my worst fears. Not only were they planning to commit me, but they already had everything organized to sell my home immediately afterward. "I already have 3 interested buyers," Mary continued. "One of them is willing to pay $110,000 in cash if we close the sale by Friday." Hearing 2 strangers discuss the price of my apartment as if it were merchandise filled me with a rage I hadn't felt in years. "Excellent," Jessica said, rubbing her hands together greedily. "Once we have the mental incapacity certificate, I can activate the power of attorney and proceed with the sale immediately." It was clear she had planned every detail of her scheme with military precision. I couldn't stand it anymore and walked into the living room where they were talking. "Who is this woman?" I asked them directly. "And why are you talking about selling my apartment?" My voice was trembling with indignation, but I tried to keep my composure. "Teresa, this is Mary, my cousin," Jessica explained with that fake smile. "She's a real estate agent and came to give us some advice on property values in this area." Of course, it was another carefully constructed lie. "A pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Teresa," Mary said with false politeness. "Jessica has told me so much about you. I'm so sorry to hear you're going through such difficult times." Her feigned compassion was so transparent, it made me want to slap her. "I am not going through any difficult times," I replied firmly. "The only difficult thing is living with people who are planning to steal my home." My direct accusation made Mary and Jessica exchange a significant look. "Teresa, dear," Jessica said condescendingly, "see what I mean? The paranoia is getting worse every day." She addressed Mary as if I wasn't even there. "She thinks we're all conspiring against her. It's so sad to see her like this." "It's understandable," Mary replied, playing along. "My grandmother went through the same thing before we had to make difficult decisions for her own good." The way they talked about me in the third person as if I were invisible made me feel like I was already dead to them. That afternoon, after Mary left, Jessica became more aggressive with me. "Tomorrow when Dr. Morris arrives, you are going to behave politely," she ordered me with a threatening voice. "You are not going to make dramatic scenes or invent paranoid stories about theft and conspiracies." "And if I don't?" I asked defiantly. I had nothing left to lose, so I decided to confront her directly. "What are you going to do?" "Hit me in front of the doctor." "I don't need to hit you," Jessica replied with an icy smile. "With your erratic behavior today, I already have enough evidence to prove you are a danger to yourself." She took out her cell phone and showed me several video recordings she had taken without me noticing. In the videos, I appeared frantically searching her room, talking aloud to myself, while cooking, and even crying in my room. All the moments had been taken out of context, but to someone who didn't know the real situation, they effectively looked like symptoms of dementia or mental instability. "This is what Dr. Morris is going to see tomorrow," Jessica informed me, putting the phone away. "Videos of an old woman who searches other people's rooms, who talks to herself, who cries for no apparent reason, and who accuses her family of wanting to steal from her." Her plan was so perfect that even I myself had begun to doubt my own sanity. That night, lying in my bed, unable to sleep, I realized I had completely underestimated Jessica's intelligence and cruelty. She wasn't just a manipulative daughter-in-law. She was a professional predator who had probably done this before to other victims. And tomorrow, with the arrival of Dr. Morris, her plan would be complete, and my life as I knew it would come to an end. Tuesday dawned gray and rainy, fitting for the darkest day of my life. I woke up before dawn with my stomach in knots and my hands shaking. In a few hours, Dr. Morris would arrive, and with him, my fate would be sealed. Jessica had orchestrated everything so perfectly that it seemed impossible to escape her trap. At 7 in the morning, I heard voices in the kitchen. Jessica was talking on the phone, probably confirming the final details of her diabolical plan. "Yes, doctor, she was very agitated all night." She lied with that perfected, worried voice. "My husband and I are very scared. Yesterday, she tried to leave the house in her underwear, insisting she had to go to work at the hospital she retired from 5 years ago." Of course, I had never tried to leave in my underwear, nor had I mentioned going to the hospital. But Jessica knew exactly what kind of stories would sound convincing to a doctor who had already been prepared to diagnose senile dementia. "Perfect. We'll see you at 3 o'clock sharp," Jessica concluded. "And doctor, please bring all the necessary forms for the commitment. We can't wait any longer. The situation is truly critical." Every one of her words was like a nail in the coffin of my freedom. When I went down for breakfast, Jessica greeted me with a smile that chilled my blood. "Good morning, Teresa dear," she said with false sweetness. "Did you sleep well? I hope you're prepared for your doctor's appointment today." The way she said "doctor's appointment" made it clear she knew exactly what was going to happen. "Jessica, please," I begged one last time. "Don't do this. I never did anything to hurt you. Why do you want to destroy my life?" My voice broke as I said those words, because I knew it was useless to appeal to a compassion she never had. "Teresa, nobody wants to destroy your life," she replied with that act of concern she used to manipulate everyone. "We just want you to get the help you need. It's for your own good." Her words sounded so rehearsed, it was obvious she had practiced that speech many times. At 10 in the morning, Thomas arrived. He had asked for time off work to be present during the medical evaluation. When I saw him walk through the door, my heart filled with one last hope. Maybe at the last moment my son would remember who his mother really was and defend me. "Hi, Mom," he said, with a mix of sadness and determination. "How are you feeling today?" There was something in his tone that told me Jessica had already prepared him for what he was about to witness. "I feel fine, son," I replied, taking his hands. "Thomas, I need you to listen to me. Jessica is not who you think she is. She is planning to commit me to get my apartment. You have to believe me." It was my last chance to make him understand the truth. Thomas looked at me with that pitiful expression that had become so familiar. "Mom, Jessica told me about your paranoid episodes," he said with feigned patience. "I know these ideas seem real to you, but you need professional help to distinguish between reality and your fears." "But son, I'm not paranoid," I insisted desperately. "Yesterday I saw commitment documents with my name on them. Jessica already has everything planned. She even contacted buyers for the apartment." My voice grew sharper because I could see he didn't believe a single word. "Mom, do you even hear yourself?" Thomas asked with frustration. "You're accusing my wife of conspiring to steal from you. That's not normal. A mentally healthy person doesn't think that way." His words confirmed that Jessica had completely poisoned his mind against me. Jessica appeared in the living room at that moment, as if she had been waiting for the perfect time to make her grand entrance. "Thomas dear, you're here," she said, giving him a kiss on the cheek. "Your mom is a little agitated today. I think she knows the doctor is coming and that makes her nervous." "It's understandable," Thomas replied, hugging his wife. "It must be confusing for her not to understand why she needs medical attention." Seeing my son show more compassion for that manipulator than for his own mother broke my heart to pieces. The hours passed with agonizing slowness. Jessica watched me constantly, as if she feared I would do something desperate. At 2 p.m, she forced me to change my clothes and comb my hair to make a good impression on Dr. Morris. "Put on that green dress that suits you so well," she ordered while going through my closet. "And let me help you with your hair. We want you to look your best." Petit. Her false request made me sick because I knew she wanted me to look presentable for the evaluation that would seal my fate. At exactly 3 o'clock, the doorbell rang. My heart started beating so hard I thought it would burst out of my chest. Jessica ran to open it with a radiant smile, as if she were welcoming an honored guest instead of the executioner of my freedom. "Dr. Morris, you're right on time," Jessica exclaimed with feigned enthusiasm. "Please come in. Teresa is waiting for you." Her performance was so convincing that even I would have believed she genuinely cared about my well-being. Dr. Morris was a man in his 50s, tall with a gray beard and glasses. He wore a dark suit and carried a leather briefcase that probably contained all the necessary forms to commit me. His expression was serious but kind, like someone used to making difficult decisions about other people's lives. "Mrs. Teresa," he said, shaking my hand firmly, "I am Dr. Morris Hernandez, a geriatric specialist in dementia. Your family asked me to come evaluate you because they are concerned about some changes in your behavior." His voice sounded professional and competent, but I knew he had already been influenced by Jessica's version of events. "Doctor, I feel perfectly fine," I replied, trying to stay calm. "I don't know why my family thinks I need a medical evaluation. Maybe they are the ones who need help." I knew those words would sound defensive, but it was the truth. "It's understandable that you feel that way," the doctor replied with professional patience. "Many people in your situation don't perceive the changes that others notice. That's why it's important to do an objective evaluation." His words confirmed he had already decided my diagnosis before he even arrived. Jessica approached the doctor with that folder I had seen days before. "Doctor, here is the evidence of the episodes I mentioned on the phone," she said, handing him the documents, videos, photographs, and a detailed log of all the incidents from the past few months. While the doctor reviewed the contents of the folder, I could see the satisfaction in Jessica's eyes. She had built such a solid case against me that it was practically impossible to refute. Every photograph, every video, every fake document had been carefully prepared to support her narrative of senile dementia. "I see you've documented everything very meticulously," the doctor said to Jessica with approval. "This will help us a lot in making an accurate diagnosis." His words sounded like a death sentence for my hopes of freedom. "Doctor, those are all lies," I tried to explain desperately. "Jessica has been manipulating the evidence to make me look like I'm crazy. She wants to commit me to get my apartment." And even as I spoke, I knew my words only confirmed the diagnosis he had already decided on. "Mrs. Teresa," the doctor said with professional condescension, "those are exactly the kind of paranoid ideas your family described to me. The belief that others are conspiring to harm you is a very common symptom in cases of senile dementia." Every one of his words was like another nail in the coffin of my legal sanity. In that moment, I realized it was all lost. Jessica had orchestrated everything so perfectly that any attempt I made to defend myself only confirmed her diagnosis. It was a psychological trap from which there was no escape, and she knew it. Dr. Morris opened his briefcase and took out a series of forms and a digital recorder. "We are going to conduct a full evaluation," he announced, organizing his materials on the dining room table. "Mrs. Teresa, I need you to answer some questions honestly. Your family can remain present as witnesses. Jessica sat next to Thomas on the sofa with that feigned expression of concern she had perfected over months. My son took her hand as if she were the one who needed emotional support instead of his own mother, who was being evaluated for involuntary commitment. First question. The doctor began consulting his papers. Can you tell me what day it is today and where you are? It was a basic orientation question, but I knew every answer would be analyzed for signs of dementia. It's Tuesday. We are in my apartment at 247 Morelos Street, and you are here because my daughter-in-law convinced you I am crazy so she can commit me and steal my property. I answered with all the clarity I could muster. I knew my answer was technically correct, but that the part about Jessica would sound paranoid. The doctor exchanged a significant look with Jessica before writing something in his notebook. Mrs. Teresa, have you noticed any changes in your memory lately? Do you forget where you put things often? His questions were clearly designed to confirm a predetermined diagnosis. Doctor, my memory is perfect, I answered firmly. The only problem I have is that someone is moving my belongings without my permission. Yesterday, my keys mysteriously disappeared, and when I looked for them, Jessica said I had lost them due to my supposed mental confusion. Exactly what I mentioned on the phone, Jessica interrupted, addressing the doctor. She thinks we hide her things, when in reality she places them in strange places and then doesn't remember doing it. Her performance was so convincing that even I would have doubted my own version if I didn't know the truth. The doctor continued with more questions about my daily routine, my family relationships, and my current worries. Every answer I gave was interpreted through the filter of senile dementia that Jessica had planted in his mind. If I remained calm, it was because I didn't understand the gravity of my situation. If I got upset, it was evidence of emotional instability. Mrs. Teresa, the doctor asked after reviewing Jessica's notes, your daughter-in-law tells me you've had episodes of aggression lately. Can you explain what makes you feel angry? It was a trap question designed to make me look violent, no matter how I answered. Doctor, I have never been aggressive, I explained, trying to stay calm. Jessica is the one who attacks me. She has pushed me, screamed at me, threatened me, but when I try to defend myself or tell my son, she says I am the one provoking her. My voice rose slightly because it was frustrating that nobody believed me. See what I mean? Jessica whispered to the doctor, just loud enough for me to hear. These baseless accusations are constant. She thinks I mistreat her when all I do is care for her with love and patience. Her fake tears appeared at the exact right moment to complete her performance. Thomas approached and took my hand with a sad expression. Mom, Jessica has never hurt you, he said with a broken voice. She takes care of you, cooks, for you, worries about you. Why do you think she wants to hurt you? Seeing the sincerity in his eyes made me understand that he truly believed I was losing my mind. Because she wants my apartment, I replied desperately. Son, yesterday I heard Jessica on the phone talking about selling the house for $110,000. She already has buyers lined up and is just waiting for this doctor to declare me incompetent. I knew my words would sound like paranoid delusions, but it was my last chance to make Thomas understand. Dr. Morris made more notes in his book while shaking his head. Mrs. Teresa, ideas of persecution related to property or money are very common in patients with cognitive decline, he explained with professional condescension. Your mind is trying to find logical explanations for the changes you are experiencing. Doctor, could you check Jessica's phone? I asked desperately. The recordings of her conversations with apartment buyers are on there. She also has videos of me that she took without my permission to use as false evidence. It was my last attempt to prove the truth. Jessica immediately stood up from the sofa with a look of feigned outrage. Doctor, do you see? Now she wants you to check my private phone because she thinks I have evidence of a non-existent conspiracy. Her performance as an offended victim was so perfect that the doctor looked at her with compassion. Mrs. Jessica, I understand this must be very difficult for you, the doctor said sympathetically. Caring for a relative with dementia requires extraordinary patience. Your dedication is admirable despite the accusations you must face daily. His words confirmed he had completely decided whose side he was on. At that moment, the doctor took a series of official forms from his briefcase. Based on my evaluation and the documentary evidence provided by the family, he announced in a formal voice, "My diagnosis is senile dementia with paranoid symptoms and episodes of aggression. I recommend immediate commitment to a specialized institution." My world completely fell apart when I heard those words. "Doctor, please," I begged, tears in my eyes. "I'm not crazy. I'm just an old woman who is the victim of an elaborate scam. Please investigate before you sign those papers." My voice broke because I knew it was already too late. "Mrs. Teresa, I understand this is difficult to accept," the doctor replied while signing the forms, "but the commitment is for your own safety and that of your family. In the institution, you will receive the medical and psychological attention you need." Every stroke of his pen sealed my fate irreversibly. Jessica went over to Thomas and hugged him, pretending to cry with relief. "Thank you, doctor," she said with a choked voice. "You don't know how hard it was to make this decision." But we knew it was the best for Teresa and for all of us. Her performance as a sacrificial daughter-in-law was so convincing that even the doctor seemed moved. "When can they take her?" Thomas asked with a trembling voice. It was clear that despite everything, it pained him to have to commit his mother, but Jessica had convinced him it was the only option. "We want her to get help as soon as possible." "The ambulance can come tomorrow morning," the doctor replied, checking his calendar. "I will call the institution to confirm they have the room ready. In the meantime, keep Mrs. Teresa calm and avoid upsetting her any more than necessary." His instructions sounded like he was talking about a sick animal instead of a human being. "One question, doctor," Jessica said with that sweet voice she used for manipulation. "Are the power of attorney forms I prepared sufficient to handle Teresa's financial affairs while she is committed? We want to make sure all her needs are covered." Her question finally revealed her true intentions. "Of course," the doctor replied, suspecting nothing. "With the certificate of mental incapacity I am issuing, you will have complete legal authority over all of Mrs. Teresa's affairs, including properties, bank accounts, and medical decisions." His words were like the final blow that completed the destruction of my life. Jessica couldn't completely hide her smile of satisfaction upon hearing those words. She had achieved exactly what she wanted: total control over my life and my assets. In less than 24 hours, I would be committed to an asylum, and she would have free rein to sell my apartment and take my entire estate. "Thank you for everything, doctor," Thomas said, shaking his hand. "I know this is the right decision, even if it's painful." My son truly believed he was doing the best for me, not realizing he had been completely manipulated by a predator who had planned everything from day one. That night after the doctor left, I was left alone in my room, knowing it would be my last night in the home I had built with so much effort. Tomorrow morning the ambulance would come, they would take me to the asylum, and Jessica would immediately begin the process of selling my apartment. Her diabolical plan had been executed to perfection, and I had been unable to do anything to stop it. That night, I couldn't close my eyes for a second. Every time I heard a noise in the house, my heart raced, thinking maybe the ambulance had arrived early. Jessica had won completely. I would be in an asylum before noon, while she would immediately start the paperwork to take over everything that belonged to me. Around 3 a.m, I heard whispering voices in the kitchen. I got up silently and moved closer to my bedroom door to try to hear what they were saying. It was Jessica talking on the phone, probably with her accomplice Mary, organizing the final details of her plan. "Everything went perfectly," Jessica whispered, satisfaction evident in her voice. "The doctor signed all the papers without asking a single question. The ambulance is coming tomorrow at 10, and by Friday we can close the sale of the apartment." Her joy in talking about my misfortune filled me with a rage I didn't know I was capable of feeling. "Yes, Mary, you can contact the buyer now," Jessica continued. "Tell him he can have the keys on Saturday if he pays the $110,000 in cash as promised. With that money, we can buy our own house and stop pretending we care about this crazy old woman." Her words confirmed what I had always suspected. She had never felt anything genuine for me or my family. "Thomas, don't worry about him," Jessica continued cruelly. "He's so manipulated he'll never suspect a thing. He thinks I'm really doing this out of love for his mother. He's so naive he'll probably thank me for making the tough decisions he couldn't make." Hearing her mock my son broke my heart. "Once we have the money, we'll invent some family emergency to move to another city," Jessica concluded. "Thomas will never have to know his mother died alone in an asylum while we spent her inheritance on vacations and luxuries." Her words chilled my blood because she spoke of my death as if it were inevitable. I returned to my bed, trembling with horror and rage. Jessica wasn't just planning to rob me, she was also planning to abandon Thomas once she had the money. My poor son would not only lose his mother, but he would also be betrayed by the woman in whom he had placed all his trust. At 6 a.m, Jessica entered my room with a breakfast tray. "Good morning, Teresa, dear," she said with that fake smile that now made me sick. "I brought you coffee and toast. We want you to have a good breakfast before your trip." The way she said trip made it clear she knew exactly what awaited me. "Jessica, please," I begged one last time. "Don't do this. You can have the apartment, you can have all my money, but don't commit me. I promise I will never tell Thomas anything about your plans." It was a desperate lie, but I was willing to say anything to avoid the asylum. "Oh, Teresa," Jessica replied with false compassion. "It's too late for negotiations. The papers are already signed, the ambulance is scheduled, and your room at the asylum is already paid for." Her words confirmed there was no turning back. "Besides," Jessica continued sitting on the edge of my bed, "do you really think I was going to trust you? You're too dangerous to leave running around. As soon as you had the chance, you'd try to convince someone to help you." While her analysis was correct, and we both knew it. At 8 a.m, Thomas arrived. He had taken another day off work to be present during my transfer to the asylum. His eyes were red, as if he had been crying all night, but his determination remained firm. "Good morning, Mom," he said, giving me a kiss on the forehead. "How did you sleep?" His question was so innocent, it made me want to hug him and tell him the whole truth about his wife, but I knew it was useless. "I didn't sleep at all, son," I answered honestly. "Do you really think this is the right thing to do, to commit your own mother to an asylum?" It was my last attempt to make him reconsider his decision. Thomas sighed deeply before answering. "Mom, it's the hardest decision I've ever had to make in my life," he said with a broken voice. "But the doctor was very clear. You need specialized care that we can't give you at home." The sincerity in his voice confirmed that he truly believed he was doing the right thing. "And what's going to happen to the apartment?" I asked him directly. "Is Jessica going to stay here alone?" I wanted to see if he knew anything about his wife's plans to sell. "Jessica and I are going to keep the house exactly as it is," Thomas replied with conviction. "It's your home, Mom, and it always will be. Maybe when you feel better, you can come visit us on weekends." His words confirmed he had no idea Jessica planned to sell the property immediately. At 9:30, Jessica began packing a small suitcase with my belongings. She chose only the oldest, most worn-out clothes, leaving behind anything of value. "You don't need much at the asylum," she explained as she selected my things. "They'll give you uniforms and everything you need there." "Can I take the picture of my husband?" I asked, pointing to the portrait that had always been on my nightstand. It was the only thing I truly cared about, keeping from my old life. "Of course," Jessica replied with feigned generosity. "But let's take a copy just in case it gets lost or broken during the transfer." She took the original photograph and put it in a drawer, giving me instead a black and white copy she had made years ago. Even in that last moment, she was stealing something precious from me. At 10 o'clock sharp, we heard the siren of the ambulance approaching down the street. My heart started beating so fast, I thought I was going to have a heart attack. After 66 years of independent life, I was about to become a prisoner in an asylum, the victim of the cruelest scam I had ever experienced. "They're here," Jessica announced with a smile she couldn't completely hide. "Teresa, are you ready for your new home?" Her question sounded like a cruel joke, but Thomas interpreted it as genuine concern for my well-being. 2 paramedics entered the apartment with a folding stretcher and transfer forms. They were young professional and clearly used to dealing with resistant elderly people who didn't want to go to the asylum. They looked at me with the same distant compassion. They probably showed all their geriatric patients. "Mrs. Teresa," the older paramedic said, "I'm Robert, and this is my partner, Eric. We're going to take you to your new home, where you'll receive the best possible care." His voice was kind but firm, making it clear there would be no discussion about my transfer. "I don't want to go," I told them directly. "I am being scammed. My daughter-in-law is stealing my apartment and committing me against my will." I knew my words would sound like the delusions of a demented old woman, but I had to try. The paramedics exchanged a knowing look before Robert answered me with professional patience. "Mrs. Teresa, we understand this is hard to accept," he said condescendingly. "But Dr. Morris explained your situation to us. You are going to be much better cared for at the institution." Jessica approached the paramedics with fake tears in her eyes. "Please be patient with her," she asked them with a perfect performance. "The last few months have been very difficult for the whole family. We hope that at the asylum she can find the peace and attention she needs." Her performance was so convincing that the paramedics looked at her with admiration for her dedication. "Don't worry, ma'am," Eric replied. "We are used to these cases. Your mother-in-law will be in the best possible hands." His words definitively sealed my fate. When they helped me up from the bed to move me toward the stretcher, my legs trembled so much I almost fell. It wasn't just physical fear. It was the complete realization that my life as I knew it had come to an end. In less than an hour, I would be in an asylum medicated and controlled, while Jessica began selling everything that belonged to me. "Goodbye, Mom," Thomas said, hugging me with tears in his eyes. "I promise I'm going to visit you every week, and when you feel better, you can come back home." His words broke my heart because I knew I would never see my home again, and I probably wouldn't see my son again either after Jessica left with the money. The paramedics helped me lie down on the stretcher, while Jessica supervised every movement with that smile of satisfaction she no longer bothered to hide completely. Thomas paced nervously around the living room, clearly affected by the situation, but convinced he was doing the right thing for my supposed well-being. "Wait a moment," a voice said from the front door. It was Rose, my next-door neighbor, a 70-year-old woman who had always been very observant. "What is going on here? Why are they taking Teresa away in an ambulance?" Her unexpected appearance made Jessica visibly tense. "Hello, Mrs. Rose." Jessica replied quickly, stepping between my neighbor and the stretcher. "Teresa needs specialized medical attention. The doctor determined it's the best thing for her mental health." Her voice sounded controlled, but I could hear a slight tremor of nervousness. Rose approached me with a worried expression. "Teresa, dear, are you okay with this?" she asked, taking my hand. "Yesterday I heard you crying in your room, and this morning I heard strange voices in your apartment." Her words made Jessica exchange a nervous look with the paramedics. "Rose, please don't interfere," Jessica told her firmly. "This is a very difficult family decision we made for Teresa's own good." "The doctor already did the evaluation." I tried to speak, but one of the paramedics had started tightening the straps on the stretcher. "Mrs. Rose," Robert, the older paramedic, intervened. "We understand your concern, but we have specific medical orders. Teresa needs immediate transport for her safety." His professional tone indicated there would be no more discussion. Rose didn't let herself be intimidated and addressed Thomas directly. "Thomas, son, do you really believe your mother needs to be in an asylum?" she asked him with a serious voice. "I see her every day, and Teresa has always been a perfectly lucid and capable woman." Her words made my son hesitate for a moment. "Mrs. Rose, you don't live with us," Thomas replied with uncertainty. "You haven't seen the episodes we've witnessed in recent weeks." Jessica documented everything for the doctor. It was clear he was starting to doubt, but Jessica intervened immediately. "Rose, I understand this is shocking," Jessica said with that manipulative voice I knew so well. "But Teresa has been very good at hiding her symptoms when she's in public. At home, the situation is completely different." Her explanation sounded logical to someone who didn't know the truth. At that moment, Rose did something that changed the entire course of events. She took out her cell phone and began to play an audio recording. "Last night I recorded this conversation I heard from my balcony," she announced firmly. "I think everyone should hear it before you take Teresa away." Jessica's voice came clearly from the phone. "Everything went perfectly." The doctor signed all the papers without asking a single question. "Tomorrow at 10, the ambulance is coming, and by Friday we can close the sale of the apartment." The words continued, revealing the entire diabolical plan I had overheard the night before. The silence that followed was deafening. Thomas looked at Jessica with an expression of total shock and confusion. The paramedics stopped dead in their tracks, clearly surprised by what they had just heard. Jessica had turned completely pale and was desperately trying to find an explanation. That's taken out of context," Jessica stammered with a trembling voice. "Rose must have recorded a phone conversation about someone else." "I never said those things about Teresa." Her excuse sounded desperate and unconvincing. "There's more," Rose continued, playing another part of the recording, where Jessica's voice was clearly heard saying, "With that money, we can buy our own house and stop pretending we care about this crazy old woman." The words cut through the air like knives, revealing Jessica's true nature. Thomas slowly approached Jessica with a look I had never seen on his face before. "Is what that recording says true?" he asked with a broken voice. "Have you been planning to sell my mother's apartment?" His hands were shaking as he waited for an answer. "Thomas, honey, I can explain everything," Jessica replied, trying to take his hands, but he pulled away instinctively. "Yes, I spoke to a real estate agent, but only to find out the property's value in case we needed to sell it to pay for Teresa's medical bills." Her explanation sounded rehearsed and desperate. "And what about pretending to care about my mother?" Thomas continued asking, with growing indignation. "And about buying our own house with the money from the sale?" His voice rose with each question as he began to understand the magnitude of the betrayal. Rose wasn't finished revealing her evidence. "I also have photographs," she announced, showing her phone. "Yesterday I saw Jessica taking documents out of Teresa's house and passing them to a blonde woman in the parking lot." The photographs clearly showed Jessica handing a folder to Mary by the car. The paramedics looked at each other with obvious discomfort. "Sir," Robert said to Thomas, "if there are doubts about the legitimacy of this transfer, maybe we should contact Dr. Morris to clarify the situation." And it was clear they didn't want to be involved in a potential medical scam. "No," Thomas replied with growing determination. "Cancel the transfer. My mother is not going to any asylum until we have clear answers about this situation." He walked over to the stretcher where I lay and began to loosen the straps holding me down. Jessica went into a complete panic, seeing her plan fall apart before her eyes. "Thomas, you can't do this," she yelled desperately. "Your mother is sick. The doctor confirmed it. If you leave her here, it will be dangerous for everyone." Her mask of the concerned daughter-in-law had fallen completely. "The only danger here is you," Thomas replied, helping me sit up from the stretcher. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I never imagined Jessica was capable of something like this." His eyes filled with tears as he hugged me, and for the first time in months, I felt like I had my son back. "Where are my apartment keys?" I asked Jessica directly. "The ones you hid so I couldn't leave when I needed to escape your abuse." My voice was firm because I finally had the backup I needed to confront her. Jessica looked toward the door as if calculating whether she could escape, but Rose had strategically positioned herself to block the exit. "I don't know what keys you're talking about." Jessica lied, but her nervousness was obvious to everyone. "Find them," Thomas ordered her with an authority he hadn't shown in months. "Right now, and I want to see all the documents you've been hiding." His transformation from a manipulated husband to a protective son was complete and final. Rose approached me with a triumphant smile. "Teresa, dear, I knew something wasn't right," she said, taking my hand. "The walls in these apartments are thin, and I've been hearing very strange conversations for weeks." Her courage to intervene had saved my life and my freedom. The paramedics began gathering their equipment, clearly relieved not to have to complete a transfer that now seemed fraudulent. "Sir, we are going to report this situation to our supervisors," Robert informed Thomas, "and we recommend you contact the authorities if you suspect criminal activity." At that moment, I realized the nightmare was finally over. Jessica had been exposed. Thomas had come to his senses, and I was not going to be committed against my voluntad, but I knew the final confrontation was still to come and that Jessica would not give up without a fight. Jessica realized her world of lies had completely collapsed and adopted a desperate, aggressive attitude she had never shown in front of Thomas. "Fine!" she screamed, her eyes bloodshot with rage. "Yes, I planned to sell this damn apartment, and yes, I wanted to get rid of this unbearable old woman who ruined my marriage from day one." Her full confession left Thomas in total shock. My son recoiled as if he had been physically slapped, looking at the woman he had married as if she were a complete stranger. "Jessica, how could you do this to me? And to my mother?" he asked with a broken voice. "Do this to you?" Jessica laughed bitterly. "Thomas, you are so naive. Since we got married, you've been more worried about your precious mommy than your own wife. This house stinks of old age and dead memories." I deserved something better. Her true personality emerged like a poison that had been contained for years. Rose continued to record the entire confession with her cell phone, making sure to capture every incriminating word. The paramedics remained as silent witnesses to the explosion of truths they were witnessing. It was like watching an actor remove a mask to reveal their true, monstrous face. "Where is Dr. Morris?" Thomas asked with growing indignation. "Is he involved in your plan too?" His question made Jessica even more nervous, as if he had touched a particularly sensitive point. "Morris is a real doctor," Jessica admitted reluctantly. "But I paid him $5,000 to sign the papers without asking questions. I told him it was for the good of a rich old woman who was squandering her family's inheritance." Her confession revealed the doctor's corruption had been an integral part of her scheme. Thomas immediately went to the house phone to call the police, but Jessica lunged at him, trying to stop him. "You can't do this," she screamed as they struggled. "I am your wife. You promised to love and protect me. Everything I did was for our future." Her desperation had made her completely irrational. "Get away from my son!" I yelled, stepping between them. For the first time in months, I felt I had the strength and the right to defend myself and my family. Jessica pushed me violently, making me fall onto the sofa, but this time there were witnesses to her assault. "That's enough!" Thomas roared, with an anger I had never seen in him before. "Rose, call the police immediately. This woman is going to pay for everything she has done." His transformation from a deceived husband to a protective son was complete and final. Jessica ran desperately for the door, but Rose blocked her path with surprising courage for a woman her age. "You're not going anywhere until the police arrive," she told her firmly. "I've been documenting your activities for weeks, and I have enough evidence to make sure you pay for your crimes." "Let go of me, you nosy old woman," Jessica yelled at Rose, trying to push her. "This is none of your business. You're just a gossipy neighbor with nothing better to do." Her disrespect for Rose confirmed her true despicable character. The paramedics decided to stay as witnesses until the authorities arrived. "Ma'am," Robert said to Jessica, "we recommend you calm down and wait to speak with the police. Anything you say or do now can be used against you." His professional advice fell on deaf ears because Jessica was completely out of control. "Where are my apartment keys?" I asked her again with renewed authority. "And I want all the documents you stole from my room." My voice was firm because I finally had the support needed to confront my tormentor. Jessica looked at me with pure hatred before pulling the keys from her pocket and throwing them on the floor with contempt. "There are your damn keys," she screamed as if they had any value. "This apartment is worth a fortune and you're wasting it living here like a hermit." Her confession about my property's value confirmed her financial motives. Thomas picked the keys up off the floor and handed them to me with tears in his eyes. "Mom, forgive me for taking away your freedom to move in your own home," he said with a broken voice. "I should have never believed you were the problem." His sincere apology began to heal the wounds Jessica had caused in our relationship. Just then, the police arrived, alerted by Rose's call. 2 officers entered the apartment and quickly assessed the situation. The presence of the paramedics, Rose's recordings, and Jessica's confessions made the case very clear for the authorities. "Ma'am," the senior officer said to Jessica, "you are under arrest for attempted fraud, document forgery, and elder abuse." As they read her rights, Jessica continued to scream accusations and threats that only worsened her legal situation. "This is unfair," Jessica protested as they handcuffed her. "Teresa is a problematic old woman who needs supervision." "I was just trying to help my family." Her desperate excuses convinced no one because the evidence against her was overwhelming. Rose handed all her recordings and photographs to the police as evidence. "Officers, I have been documenting this woman's suspicious activities for weeks," she explained proudly. "I have phone conversations, photographs of document transactions, and evidence of verbal abuse toward Teresa." Her meticulousness had been key to exposing the crime. The officer took statements from everyone present, including the paramedics who had witnessed Jessica's confessions. "Mrs. Teresa," he said to me respectfully, "I am very sorry for what you have had to endure. We are going to make sure justice is served in this case." His words gave me a sense of validation I hadn't felt in months. As they took Jessica away in handcuffs, she looked at me one last time with a hatred that sent chills down my spine. "This isn't over, old woman," she yelled as they dragged her to the police car. "When I get out of jail, I'm going to get revenge on all of you." Her threats confirmed she felt no remorse for her actions. Thomas came to me after the police left and hugged me with an intensity I hadn't felt since he was a boy. "Mom, I swear I will never doubt you again." He promised, tears streaming down his cheeks. "Jessica manipulated me completely, but that doesn't excuse me for not trusting my own mother." His sincere repentance began to rebuild the bridges Jessica had burned. Rose stayed with us to make sure I was okay after the trauma. "Teresa, dear, I always knew something wasn't right," she said, making tea for everyone. "A woman who has worked her whole life and raised a wonderful son doesn't just lose her mind overnight." Her unwavering support had been my salvation. That night, for the first time in months, I went to bed in my own bed feeling safe and free in my own home. Jessica was in jail. Thomas had come to his senses, and Rose had become an invaluable ally. My nightmare was over, but the emotional scars would take time to heal. The next day, Thomas and I went to the bank to change all the passwords on my accounts and review any suspicious transactions Jessica had made. We discovered she had stolen nearly $3,000 in small amounts over the last few months, but fortunately the bulk of my savings remained intact. We also contacted a lawyer to begin divorce proceedings and ensure Jessica could not claim any rights to my properties or Thomas's. The lawyer assured us that with all the evidence we had, the case would be relatively simple. Weeks later during the trial, Jessica was sentenced to 5 years in prison for fraud, document forgery, and elder abuse. Dr. Morris was also arrested and lost his medical license for accepting bribes to falsify diagnoses. Justice had finally prevailed. Thomas and I rebuilt our relationship slowly with the help of family therapy to heal the damage Jessica had caused. He moved into his own apartment, but came to visit me every day, and we had dinner together on Sundays, just like we used to before she came into our lives. Rose became my best friend and confidant. Her courage to intervene when I needed it most had saved my life, and I will never be able to thank her enough. Now we have coffee together every afternoon and watch over each other's apartments like a neighborhood watch system. My story became a warning for other families about the dangers of predators who take advantage of the elderly. I gave several interviews to raise awareness about these crimes and help other victims recognize the signs of abuse before it's too late. Today, 6 months after my nightmare, I live peacefully in my apartment, secure in the knowledge that Jessica can no longer harm me. I have learned to trust my instincts again and not to let anyone make me doubt my own sanity. My son has learned a valuable lesson about manipulation, and our relationship is stronger than ever. The experience taught me that it's never too late to fight for justice and that there will always be good people willing to help if we have the courage to ask for it. Jessica thought she had won, but in the end, truth and true family always prevail over evil and greed.